First off, I want to thank the brave men and women who work behind the wall. I want to thank them on a national level because their job goes unrecognized.
How do they try to turn a guard?
Well, correctional officer. Sorry, I apologize. But correctional officer. How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Ganji. Welcome to another episode of Tier Talk. Guys, this video today is a very important video. It's about our mental health and well-being in corrections. I was interviewed today by the Unconditional Freedom Project. This is a group that has decided to do testimonials about correctional officers and discuss their mental health and well-being while working in corrections. I did my testimonial. Gary York did one. Russ Hamilton. A bunch of others have done it. And what they do is they take your testimonial, they edit it, and after you review it and you're okay with everything, they publish it. It's a beautiful thing that they're doing. So today, what I decided to do so we can get more people involved is to show you my interview. Because I was interviewed on Zoom. And it's a great dialogue and it goes very deep into our mental health and well-being. Now, guys, if you want to do this, in the description is a copy of the email that he sent me that's going to have a link to the website and his email as well. So if you're interested and you want to share your story, this is worth it, guys. But check out this interview. I think it was very well done. And again, Hesham, thank you for the opportunity. All right, check this out.
All right, welcome, Anthony. Glad to have you.
Glad to be here.
Right on. Let's see. First, let me ask, first of all, what made you want to be a CO?
All right, so I started my career back in 2002. And to be honest with you, I was waitering. Just wasn't making the money I needed to. We needed a career. And immediately, corrections, at least in the state I'm in, the initial pay was great, benefits. So I, jumped on the opportunity. Simple.
Yeah. And where did you work and for how many years in each section?
Okay, so I do work for, I can't be too specific, but I do work for a state prison. I started my career with females, was there for about 9 years. And then I became a sergeant at a maximum security prison. I did that for about 3 years and change. And now I'm on the administrative level of the facility I'm at now houses all level of inmates. So we have everything from close custody to full min and residential release.
Right on. And I guess what's it like being a CO?
All right, so I was a CO and a sergeant so far. Let's see, I was a CO for about 3 years and change. So let's say a total of 12 to 13 years on the custody side. It's work I thoroughly enjoyed. I believe it's work that does have a purpose. Outside of just safety and security, we do have the ability to impact the lives of the people that we interact with. It's not what the public sees. Technically, we do have an influence. We'll see them as, in some cases, role models. People that that they can model from, especially if they do have these positive interactions that kind of lead the inmate into having a level of expectations and then trying to work with the inmate to reach those expectations. So I found the work to be very rewarding, and it does give you a chance to create just a great impact on a very high level, especially with lives that you normally want to interact with.
Yeah, and I was going to say, what do you think is kind of the stereotypes of a CO and like what is actually a CO?
Well, the stereotype is always going to be something primitive. We're guards. We stand around in a world that doesn't move, and all we do is warehouse inmates. That's not the case. We've evolved. Obviously nowadays you have a world that is in constant motion, programming, everything. We're facilitating the needs of the inmates to prepare them for re-entry into society. And what they don't see, or what the public may not get an understanding of, is the interactions that we have behind that wall in an effort to better the lives of the people that are there. There are dangers. Obviously, our attempt to kind of keep that world moving, the interactions that have increased now, puts us at a lot more risk. I mean, again, we interact with the inmates a lot more than we ever did in the past. So there is that risk. There is that inherent risk because we do have those daily interactions. But outside of that, outside of that risk, we do our part in playing into that re-entry, that rehabilitation and re-entry. Part of the protect and serve of corrections, especially now for a lot of custody staff, and I think they realize it now, is that, yes, our job is to protect the public, protect ourselves, protect the population, but we also are part of that rehabilitation service because we do wear many hats. As correctional officers, we wear many hats. And part of that service does cross into helping the program providers and be an extension of what their needs are so we can go ahead and prepare these inmates to re-enter society with just a different mindset. And we are a part of that.
Yeah, for sure. I think, one of the things in the research I come across is people think COs are just kind of knucklehead, just beating up inmates and blah, blah. And then in our testimonials, these beautiful guards, man, beautiful COs, beautiful COs are, treating inmates with a level of humanity and like almost not even thinking about their cases because that kind of has a bias. And it's actually very complex kind of job to actually it's very actually intellectual and cerebral to be able to think and be always there. And how do you feel like you handle that with, during your time?
Well, obviously, working in corrections, you have to be objective. I mean, you have to be firm, fair, and consistent. First thing is being that way with yourself. Knowing this is the world you're working in, and these are the people that you're paid to protect and serve. So if you're not able to do that, then you definitely can't work in this profession. It's actually one of the hardest things that we have to do is to make sure that we maintain that level of professionalism with people that we may have a bias against because of their crimes. Now, most of us may not know what they do. Jails may be a little bit different because obviously on intake, they're going to be given a lot more information. But when you work in the prison setting, the inmate's already been introduced to the system. They're already been sentenced. So we may not be that familiar with what they do unless the case is just a very high profile case or we make the actual effort. I would actually say if you make the effort to look up their crime, it would be related to your duties. I would hope it would be. But if you're making the effort to look up their crime for personal reasons, I would advise people against that. If you want to do professional reasons, obviously you have to. I get it, job safety and security 100%. But if you're looking at it for personal reasons, again, that's something you may do at the very beginning of your career. Every interaction, I found myself doing it, but then again, it starts to blend in. And it's funny because even in where I work, there's not that really many crimes now that shock me because I've actually kind of been in the system now for 19 years. I know what people are capable of doing. But having said that, the one hard part about our job is knowing what they've done and then still being able to treat them in a professional manner and still believe in their effort to rehabilitate and change. I mean, again, that's great that our service providers can do that, but it's also great for us who are trained to have that universal precaution. We're trained for safety and security, and it's good for us to also have that balance and try to create a positive interaction that, provides that level of hope. And sometimes it's good for us to see it too, because I think in our profession, the last thing you want to do is lose that level of hope and humanity. So maybe it is a good thing for us to know that even the worst can turn around because again, it's one of the few things that a lot of us may try to hold on to throughout our journey through this profession. Kind of reminds us of, because believe it or not, I think a lot of us do come into this profession because they feel they can have an impact and they do want to help out with those service providers. But if you start getting disenfranchised, if you start believing that people can't change, then it starts to lessen that purpose for you. And now what's going to happen here is that once you start losing purpose, then this truly is just a career with no internal reward or incentive to go. And at that point, what's the purpose, right?
Wow, that's beautiful.
Oh, thank
Yeah. How do you feel like that? I feel like that really drives you a lot. You know, it's interesting. I see that a lot in how you feel inspired by your job. And like, I was gonna ask, like, have you felt like the job has from your first day in to now, how has it like changed you?
you. You know what's funny? That's actually a good question. One thing I told myself going in is that I have to remember who I am at all. Next piece of advice would be that as a correctional officer, anybody working in corrections, remember who you are going in, because that is who you have to hold on to something. If you don't know who you are going in, you're going to get lost in the scramble of what the career could make you, because there are things that you're going to see, the hypervigilance that you have to maintain when you're behind that wall, because there is always that threat at any moment. You know, all because you go through a moment doesn't mean there can't be another moment that's going to rise right after. So my thing is, I've always held on to a piece of who I am, something that can go back and keep me grounded. And I also have no problem talking to my loved ones and my family, because they also know who I am when I'm not in that uniform or I'm not playing that role. And I actually think now it's also become more acceptable for us as correctional officers or as correctional staff to admit we're vulnerable, you know, to admit that certain things get to us, including an inmate suicide. You know, a lot of people think we're cold and it doesn't get to us. And in my experience, that's not the case. You know, besides, you know, how I felt about it, I've seen officers where it gets to them. However, for whatever the reason is, it could be, you know, it's a life at the end of the day, regardless of what they've done, it's still a life. So having that sense of who I am and reminding myself that if ever I feel that I'm getting lost, it kind of gives me that North Star. So I'm never truly lost. I may go through my moments when I'm trying to process something, but at least I know where I have to be. So yeah, I try not to change too far from who I was 19 years ago. And trust me, I get tested. I mean, it's going to happen, but it's been pretty good to me, to the point where I've been married since 2006. I have 2 kids. I maintain a good family life, I believe. I mean, that's key, obviously. And, you know, I still smile. I still laugh. I mean, you know, chaos. So I like to think just remembering who I am and coming into the profession swearing that I'm never going to lose that. And then reminding myself, you know, once in a while when shit hits the fan, to kind of find people who also know who I am. So if I do start to change and I do make those subtle shifts, because that's the thing too, change is slow and subtle, so you don't realize it. So if I start to see those subtle shifts, or if I don't, my family knows enough to say, hey, and I need to internalize what they're telling me. It's not an attack. I'm not resistant to their help. I just go back and recollect my thoughts and say, you know what? Let's not go too far down that path.
Wow, that's beautiful. You really have a great support system.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing.
Nice. Because I was gonna ask, like, you know, a lot of CEOs that I've talked to and just talk about the history, and some don't have that, and they don't feel like they can have their certain release. You know, and I wonder what had it be different for you, you know, and then if you see that in other coworkers where, you know, they were having a hard issue, and they felt like they couldn't talk to someone because of the, you know, the kind of the catch-22. They can't talk to and say that they, you know, tell their superiors that they're having a hard time or having suicidal thoughts, because then it will take away their weapon, and then all of a sudden their career goes down the drain. So then they get put in a tight spot of either going to drink, you know, some commit suicide, you know, like that we found. So I wonder what your experience in that part.
Well, you know, management needs to know that they want a healthy staff, so they do have to provide a venue that the staff can trust. You know, again, if I'm going to admit that I'm vulnerable, I don't want consequences for that. And to be honest with you, that's going to lessen their motivation to admit that they're vulnerable. So you're going to have management that not only wants to kind of address that, you know, as a proactive measure, but also make sure they have the resources to do something in case there is a concern. So usually what happens here is, because when you're limited resources, okay, we got to get rid of this person. But when you have the resources, we got to help this person. You know, if that makes any sense. So one thing is that people have to trust in the people that are providing the help. So a lot of places will actually have CISM teams or peer-to-peer support. These are usually made up of team members who are, you know, familiar with the lifestyle, are able to connect with the individual on a personal level. And they're actually should be, I mean, not even just correctional officers. I mean, just in general, correctional staff as well deal with the same pressure, the non-uniform staff. But with that said, obviously, it's a little bit more heightened for COs because of the fact that they are that response. But you do have people that, they form a team. It's like a CISM response team. They are their peers. And it kind of gets them to open the door and say, hey, it's okay if you feel a certain way. So I think right now the word you want to get out, and I think even for me when I deal with someone that I sense is going through something, is to first let them know it's okay to feel the way you feel. I mean, that's it. I don't even care what it's over. It's just the point is it's okay to feel the way you feel. And then let them build that trust so they know that they believe you when you say it, that you're not setting them up. And then the key here is your reactions to it, how you help them, if they feel that they're being helped. Because then once people start to see what you've done for that one, then others will come out. You also have to be proactive, which means you can't wait for people in this profession to come to you and ask for help. You're going to have to go and maybe do something yearly or every 2 years just to check on the mental well-being of your staff, because you'll be surprised the people who don't ask for help that need it. So that requires a proactive approach, especially in a profession like this, where the things that you see or that they could see, and that it could have a toll. So it's not something that you want to stand idle by and, unless they need us. Well, guys, the stuff that they see, maybe we should check on them, because it's obvious that the stuff that they see requires a follow-up once in a while.
Speaking to that, do you have an example of maybe a situation with maybe a coworker you knew who was just totally fine 1 second, you didn't think he had any issues, and then all of a sudden gone the next?
Yeah, my career, I have definitely known some people who have taken their own lives. It's tough to handle because when they do that, they leave so many questions unanswered, especially the people who are the closest to them, who wonder if they could have said something at that last point, or if they could have prevented it, or was it them, not knowing, and then wind up just going back thinking of every dialogue they had.
Wow.
It's funny because instead of them thinking that the dialogue that they had prolonged their life, maybe it's more of, I could have said something more, not realizing that if a person had their mind set on it, it's very hard to see it, and also in most cases could be impulsive. It could be, an action that happened or something that happened in their lives that at that moment, they make a quick response, and there's just nothing you could do. So I would say there was maybe definitely one that truly shocked me. Someone I worked with, he was just happy, a good person, but unfortunately, a situation happened in his life, and how he reacted to it was very extreme, because it didn't just involve himself. He also took the life of another. So again, not to minimize what he done, but a lot of people are unsure about how to feel about that because of what he did before he took his own life. So, interacting with the people that needed help, it was like telling them, you have to feel the way you have to feel. So maybe this person did something horrible before they went, but you didn't know that person. You knew the person that was good to you. So you have to process it the right way, because if you don't, you're going to explode eventually. So, I think sometimes people don't think they can process something, but in that case here, that shocked me because it was such an extreme act, even before taking his own life, what he had done, and then not knowing how you feel about that. Because don't forget, working in our world, he did something that would have made him an inmate before he took his own. But having said that, if he treated you a certain way and you're not allowing yourself to feel who he was to you, well, then you're not going to let yourself heal. So, it's basically telling people, it's again, giving them permission. I know it sounds crazy, but it's okay if you feel the way you feel.
Yeah. Approval. We like in our book, we're thinking about having approval for your feelings and everything that's going on. And I was just wondering, I was like, does that make you, when you see something like that, does that make you then question everybody else that's around you?
It depends on how you relate the circumstances of the of what caused it. Because the thing is, that's a good question too. So one thing is, the first thing I think some of us do is we push ourselves away from what happened by saying, well, that would never happen to us. His life circumstances were different, whatever it is. And sometimes it's really hard to relate it to the job too, because it's not an instant reaction at the job. It's something that was taken at home that could have really been a situation there. So sometimes it's hard to relate both worlds. But there are certain cases where, there are certain cases where you actually, if you allow the job to change you, how you handle things on the job can easily be seen in the outside world. So now I see the relationship, so it's not so much about the situation, but how you deal with the situation. So when you start looking at it from that perspective, like, wow, that was pretty aggressive. And then you can kind of relate, well, that wasn't who this person was 10 years ago. And now look at them in the course of being in this profession. Then yes, and it does make you question. And what they would probably do is, once they have a death like that they feel can impact the facility, especially if people can't find the reason behind it. Because remember, if you can't find the reason behind it, you're afraid that I'm not going to be able to avoid it. So I have to find a reason that can either, push me away. Okay, that's not going to happen to me. Or if I feel it can, I have a chance to address it. It's usually the deaths that you can't find a reason behind that you start to worry about, because then no one's able to sit there and say, well, I don't know if that can't happen to me. I don't know what made this person go that route. So usually when you have something extreme like that happens, what you're going to wind up doing is you're going to have that response team come in, and they're addressing the concerns of the staff, both to show, yes, we care, we want to help, but also they're trained as well to see, is this going to trigger someone else to think it's okay to do it? So, we have to respond to that immediately, because we got to be very careful of what could be that domino effect. But again, it's really about how you relate to the person who did it. Are you able to, understand the circumstances, and then maybe just pull yourself, well, that's not me. Or if you can't, and it's not, it may be tougher, because then you're like, well, that could happen to me. Like you mentioned something great. Like, you don't want to see a death all the time and say, well, that's directly related to you working in the profession, because then we're all going to be like, holy crap, that's kind of generalize all suicides or all PTSD, because it's incredible. So it's really about something specific. So for me, it's more about the behavior of the situation. So okay, we had the situation when this happens, but was there a behavior that they may have developed through their time in corrections, which led them to believe that this would be a solution for them on the outside? So there is that shift. But right, I think most of the time it's exactly what you said. It's a matter of how you connect what just happened to the profession, and we all try, but sometimes it's situational, or sometimes you do see that person that could be that change, and we have to talk to them. Hey, listen, hey, you weren't this way a while ago, and now it seems like people are pushing your buttons. Because, by the way, I want to say something on the adverse to that too. You could have people that have a rough home life that start bringing that into the profession. So you don't really know, what that direct.
That's good.
Is it the profession bringing it out to the home life, or is it the home life bringing it back to the profession? So you really have to focus on the situation and see where the strongest relationship and behavior are. I mean, can I connect that to, who they've become, or from this profession, or is this really this person that they just married or got involved with that, because maybe this person was in this profession for 10 years and never was this aggressive before, but now they've been married for the last 2 and the changes are coming. That's not probably the profession. That's probably the introduction of the significant other, or whatever, just in general.
Yeah. But then you see them having home issues, and then their job starts to slip, their behavior all of a sudden starts to change, and then maybe they start drinking, maybe they start doing this or that, and then all of a sudden it just kind of goes rampant from there.
Yeah, well, the relationship to it all, believe it or not, though, we could draw a general relationship right now. Mm-hmm. It's for COs, we don't handle vulnerability well. So what may stop us from processing it correctly could be the fact that we don't want to admit we're vulnerable. So that comes out from the profession regardless either way. You know what I mean? Gotcha. So, or whether I'm having trouble with my loved one, not wanting to talk about it, not wanting to share those thoughts, not wanting to tell you how it affects me, that could come from the hard exterior that we're expected to have when working in corrections. So yeah, you know, maybe how we deal with it, how we process our problems from, you know, whatever happened, you know, the stress of the job or even the stress at home, how we process it could be related to how we feel we need to be to kind of keep ourselves not vulnerable. So yeah, I believe that, you know, again, there's a relationship, but when it comes to the specific situation, you know, that's different. But how we're taught to process things or how we feel, I got to stop saying taught, how we feel we should process it based on who we are in this profession could relate to what we feel is expected of us in regards to not being vulnerable.
Oh, that's awesome. You made me think of like, I feel like you've evolved from when you first started to now on how you process things. So how was it? How were you able to deal with things when you first started your first couple of years, and how are you processing things now after years of experience?
All right. So believe it or not, I've never really shifted too far of who I was 19 years ago. I mean, I was always a person that, you know, I always saw the best in people regardless. I told myself that I would have a purpose. So I do have an internal why that's always driven me, even through the rockiest of times. Now, there is some stress of the profession. It's not always the inmates. You know, it could be your peers. It could be admin. You know, the changes that are happening, you know, where we feel that we're not involved in those changes. But as I've moved up, I'm also at a higher position now. So I like to think that in the higher position, I do have some more control. But that's another thing, though, because you have authority, you may have the illusion of control, but you know, or illusion of freedom. But technically, sometimes more authority is you're not always that free. There's always a boss. But I would say, let me just think. So, what would be the one thing that I feel would have changed the most? You know, I'm going to say this. You know, I'm going to say I've been pretty consistent with who I am, even in the supervisory profession position I'm in now. Most people will say, Gandhi, you have not changed. You know, even when you're an officer, and even as I moved up and the pressures have increased, I have that foundation to go back to. So I'm going to say that I pretty much remained consistent with who I am coming in, and have remained that way for 19 years. So I don't really think I changed or evolved that much. I mean, the only thing I could say, because I've grown, I started as a professional at 24, 25 years old. I could say, I mean, there's got to be something that has grown since then. I could say,
like, do you feel it's easier for you to share your feelings now more than before?
Never had that problem.
Never had that. Wow, that's awesome.
I've never had that problem. But you know what, though? I'll say this, though. I promise you I've never had that problem. Ask anybody my whole life. I'm a talker. Obviously, look at me now. I've never had that problem. If I felt a certain way, even if I would get in trouble for it, I say how I feel. I'm pretty consistent with that. But since I moved up, I do find myself, if I can, trying to help others a little bit more too, because I figure, you know, in this position, I may be able to offer more if possible. So, but I would not say that I have. I've just been pretty much consistent. You know, if I had any concerns, I knew what my resources were. So I guess I would tell anybody coming in, you know, hold on to who you are, know where your resources are. You know, make sure you process what you're dealing with. Maybe not at the moment because you have to solve a concern, but allow yourself a few moments afterwards to kind of really, think about what just happened, suicide and assault, if you were assaulted. Sometimes we obviously in the moment you can't process it. And then when it's over, you're kind of going through the motions, but it's like, okay, it's over now, we're good. Yeah, but hold on, you still went through something. Give yourself a chance to process that. So I think I've learned that. Maybe I've learned the importance of understanding how we must process something as opposed to dismissing it. So I think I've grown in that aspect, and then been able to share that with others, telling people, even if they don't think it, hey, let's talk about that real quich. What you just went through. Again, I'm good. I know, but let's talk about it. You know what I mean? Let's just see. Good to get it out.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, how do you process? Like, do you sit and talk with people? Do you recommend them writing? Do you recommend them, sharing with their family? Like, how do you get people to process it?
To each their own. So some
or for
people,
you at least, yeah.
So some people do have resources and they're comfortable with sharing it as long as they're able to share with someone that's comfortable in hearing it. Again, you don't have to spill out every bloody detail, but you got to have somebody that really is engaged in how you feel and not trying to, one up you or, oh, you've gone through that. I've gone through. No, I just need someone to feel what I feel right now. It's about me. Let me get this moment. So again, people that you can trust to communicate with. For people that write, that's fine too. I mean, sometimes people may not want to share it at that moment with somebody. I get it. And I said at that moment doesn't mean you can't do it eventually, but write it and let it out. So maybe you can go back and kind of reread it again to see, when you're in a better mindset, but yeah, I think writing it is always great therapy, So again, if I may not want to rush out and tell someone right away, but you know what, let me at least write something down just to remember, how I felt this moment. Because the concern is if you don't let it out, you bottle. And then when you bottle it up, the problem is you're going to explode, but you can no longer identify what the issue is, because it may not be what happened between me and my wife, or it may not be what happened with me and that inmate at that one moment. It could be something that's at the bottom that I never properly took care of. So I guess the best way to do it is after each incident, empty the bottle. That makes sense. Empty the bottle.
That's awesome.
Yeah, empty the bottle.
Yeah, it's either you empty the bottle or someone just go into another bottle,
Yeah, do what you can, but make sure that you're able to identify the concern and address it at that moment before it gets lost among other concerns. And now you have no idea how to settle anything because you don't know what's really causing it.
Yeah, that's awesome. I just kept thinking about your internal why. Like you feel very driven and like you've stayed the same person and like caring, ambitious, also and do an amazing job. And it's just like now I'm just curious as to what's this internal why of yours that has you just so like who you are and you just follow that.
My belief in people, first starting with my peers, my staff, my COs, my correctional staff, the people. I believe in this profession. I believe it's noble. I believe what we do is the public service that gets not recognized. So part of my internal why is to kind of first let us see it in ourselves, our importance, and put it out there as much as you can, just remind people and, that we do a great job. We are true professionals, and to kind of give them their self-worth. And that's always been the mission for Tier Talk, is about the worth of this profession, the worth of what we do, because a lot of us do connect to the jobs we do. It becomes a part of who we are. As much as we separate ourselves from work. Yeah, but it's part of who we are. 25 years in a profession, it's going to be part of who you are. So why not make the best of it? Being given that chance to have an impact on the lives. I mean, at first it was inmates, and then as I move up, it's the people you supervise, the people you need to care for, the people that are doing the job. So bringing about a respect and understanding for that profession. And it's great because when you have that internal why, it motivates you even on the hardest of times, because the incentive isn't external. It's mine. It's something that it's internal. It's in me. So the internal why is really about us recognizing the great work that we do and still doing it, trying to bridge that gap. And then hopefully when we see it in ourselves, others will see it. And that's always going to be an ongoing mission, because you take 20 million steps forward and somebody does something foolish and you brought 40 million steps.
Yeah.
The steps forward are always very small,
Hmm.
but one foolish thing and it's, all the way back. 20 million steps forward is great, but if you make a mistake, now I'm going 40 million steps backwards. But technically what drives me is the recognition for what we do and for us to find value in what we do on all levels of what I feel to be is a very noble profession.
No, that's beautiful. I feel like that's a lot of COs, kind of forget there is a value there, and just like, because society doesn't, and this is what we want to change also, is that society doesn't see it as such an honorable job, that has a lot of impact. We tend to just follow what Hollywood portrays correctional officers as. But I'm also curious now to ask you, growing up, did you grow up in law enforcement? Was your parents or anything like that? Is there something that happened when you were younger that just inspired you?
No, actually, it would be great. I don't know if I'll be allowed to do this, but if you wanted to ever give me this video, I'll put it on my YouTube channel. This whole interview. I don't know if you're allowed to do that, probably, but I would, because interview. You're great.
Thanks, man.
Yeah. By the way, that's a hint. So if you say yes, just let me know. I will. So
I'll come on your show. We can talk.
Yeah, we got to do this. But if you ever want to use this, I could use this to tell people, hey guys, if you're interested in doing this testimonial, this was mine, and you'll see the written. But whatever, if you want.
Yeah, for sure. Okay.
Yeah, just let me know. Just send me the video file, and I'll do it. I'll post it up ASAP. By the way, it's a great interview. All right, but let me get back to your question. So believe it or not, when I was a kid, I had my interactions with law enforcement. I used to like going into vacant buildings, as most kids do. So I never went to jail and like that. Don't get me wrong. I never gotten that far in the criminal justice system. I would just kind of get picked up by the police and brought back home. Always messing with me going into those vacant. There'd be like these vacant buildings we would explore as kids. But the funny thing is, it was me entering this profession just to have a job, make some money and get some benefits. Like I said, waitering wasn't working for me. That wind up giving me the respect. So I didn't have anybody from the anybody in my family who was law enforcement. Not that we in our house we taught people not to listen to law enforcement. Yeah. You still have that generalized respect. I mean, we always had that. But wasn't as into it, but then when I got into this profession, I connected to the work we do because I myself am doing it. And then when you go out and these people are negatively bashing the profession and you're sitting there like, hey, well, you're wrong about it. And you're constantly fighting. Well, then I'm like, wow. So after a couple of that, it's like, yeah, this is important to me now because I'm tired of people bashing what I do because it is a piece of who I am. So I think what happened was when I became a CO, I made this profession part of me. So bashing the profession or bashing the law enforcement part of it, whatever it is, now becomes an attack on me personally. So again, it took me to understand the work that was being done for me to understand firsthand, wow. This is really great work. And then for me to be able to, kind of stand by it with so much conviction.
Wow. That's awesome. I think that's the difference between you've learned how to thrive in it instead of just trying to survive. And that's awesome.
Yeah. What's funny about that though. I think what I kind of said, and I like what you just said there. I think what I kind of said actually is the reason why people from the outside a lot of them may not have that connection nowadays, because for me, it was really getting in and seeing the work. A lot of us are not really going to see what's done behind that wall, the way it really, what really happens. So, again, if you go into the line of work and you witness firsthand, then you're able to see maybe something a little bit different and feel a little different about what it is.
And what do you think it'll take to change, people's outside perspective, on a big level of what it is to be a CO?
Meet the people and understand the profession through the people first outside of uniform. A lot of us right now have put a negative label on the uniform that anybody who wears the uniform has been generalized to be whatever negative term you want to get, aggressive Neanderthals, racist, whatever it is. but they're seeing it the wrong way. They're seeing it as the uniform first and the person. I guarantee you, if you take the time and sit down with most of us outside the uniform, spend time at a family barbecue with us, you'll start to connect to the people who wear the uniform. So I think it starts with the connection. Connect to the people who work this profession without the uniform, and then you'll see that the people that, yes, they may wear the uniform, but they're no different than you. They have a job, they're committed to a greater service, but it's the hate for the uniform right now that has been generalized to hate the people that wear it. But no one's taken time out to learn about the people who wear it. Look at the people first, understand them, see them outside their uniform. And I promise you, if you start to understand the people and respect the people, you will respect the profession.
Well,
That's
well
how
said. Well said.
But you know what? That's what brings my bond in this profession, because working it and then seeing that brotherhood and sisterhood you have behind the wall. It's not the uniform. It's we care for each other. We love each other. We promise that we be there for each other. So we connect to the people. I'm not going to put my life on the line because you wear the uniform. I'm putting my life on the line because it's you, and you would do the same for me. That's why the bond is so close, because we connect to who we are first as people. Because ultimately, when an officer risks their lives for, let's say, another officer, because that's what we do, it's not about the uniform. It's Tommy has 2 kids. Or Cheryl's a mother of 4, because we know each other to that point where we become a family. But again, the connection really starts on the human side, so I think the public looks at the uniform, they hate the uniform, so they judge the people that wear it. But I promise you, if they could be taken out of that conditioned perspective and kind of move towards the people first, you may start to see something totally different. But it starts by looking at the people first.
Wow. Oh, yeah, well said. I like that. And then, my other question was, how do you feel like? I think we touched on a little bit of how to get the COs to help. Like you said, it starts with the administration. But what else do you see that would really help change the game?
In regards to what? In regards to helping us open up?
Having them kind of having their chance to, like you said, connection really heals in that way. And it's like, how do you really get, officers to have that?
A trust in each other. Again, you said the approval before, allowing to feel, letting people know it's okay to be vulnerable, that there's not a consequence for that. We have the resources, we can help you. Us as peers, we're the first ones that have to let them know that it's okay if you feel a certain way, and not to judge people for how they feel. Not to find it funny or badmouth them or gossip about them or think that they're weak. So technically, it starts with the people you work around, because your family's going to support you anyway, or they should. But remember, you have to work around these people majority of the day. So they are a big key in how you're able to admit how you feel. They have to be, they could either be the person that helps you get help, or they could be the biggest obstacle. So, they're the ones that have to start it, in my opinion. Obviously, besides you admitting it first that you have a concern, let's just get that off the table first. But the people that, can help address those, I think in my mind, are how it's received by the peers, that making them know that it's okay in this profession to feel. So I think if you have staff that, that you're surrounded by, that kind of give you that approval. I like what you said there, believe it or not.
Yeah.
That goes a long way in starting to change the, how we feel the profession wants us to be. Because I don't think it's always that aggressive, can't have any feelings, no level of vulnerability. Guys, no one can live that way. You got to have a way to debrief and get things out. But it does start with the peers. It starts with, it also continues on with the supervisors, where the resources, and then obviously having that support at home with the family, and really giving the family also, some level of understanding of what we do and why we may feel a certain way. Because again, your family, they're on the outside looking in. So I think having more events that involve the families, bringing everybody together and kind of seeing us in our element a little bit, you know, and giving them an understanding of the work we do, so the family knows, you know, how it is to deal with us, and you know, and
Yeah.
I think that matters too. So, and again, you know, it's a continuation of, you know, what the job can provide, but you also have to make sure that whatever you do at the job to try to get things going and make, you know, staff feel that they're appreciated, but that if you're vulnerable, we got your back. You have to find a way to continue that with the family so they don't dismiss the work that's being done. Both ways. We could also do on the other side. The family could be that great support, but then the person goes back to work and they don't get that. So it's a continuation of services, if you will, that show you're appreciated and have value to the point where we want you to be okay.
That's awesome. That's beautiful. Right on. Yeah.
Thanks.
That was, you know, it's funny you mentioned that, because we've been thinking lately of interviewing families of correctional officers, you know, to get it with their side, you know, because we've had some research where spouses were like, I couldn't reach my husband for years, didn't know what to do, didn't know how to help him, you know, in the situations. And then on the other hand, correctional officers are like, I don't know how to explain to my wife what is actually even happening, you know. And it's like, how do you, on your personal experience, you know, with family, I know you said you talked to them a little bit, you know, from, you know, how the job tells you leave your work at work and don't bring it home, but it's just like, you can't, you know. So what would you, based on your experience, how you did with it, and then like, what would you recommend to others?
All right. So the biggest myth is what you just said: work at work, home at home. I mean, obviously, you have to leave home at home. You don't want to bring that into work. And I get that. If you need a sick day, you got to do what you got to do. I'm not looking for the inmates to be a resource for me. So if I have problems at home, I want to be able to deal with those at home, because that's personal. I'm not bringing that into the. But it's hard to say that what happens at work, I can literally leave that at work. That's hard, and that also doesn't allow me a proper environment to process who I am outside the uniform. You know, because I'm not going to be who I am outside the uniform at work. You know, I have to be a certain role. Again, you know, it's expected at a certain point. So I don't want to bring my personal stuff into the environment, but I also want to be able to take. If I have concerns, I want to be able to have a resource, and I want my family to be that resource, because again, they know who I am before I put on the uniform, but they also know who I am when I take the uniform off. Now, the problem is when you disconnect from the side that you said. So if I disconnect from, okay, I'm at work, and you know what happens at work has to stay at work. Well, here's what happens. That's a big portion of my day that I'm affected by, right? So if I don't share any of that and I'm going through these concerns, I'm going to start going through a subtle change to the point where, you know, my family's not going to recognize me anymore, even when I take off the uniform, because I'm never really taking it off, you know, ever. You know, taking that uniform off is literally, this is how my day was today, honey. This is what happened. Yeah. I mean, it's not just the uniform physically, it's the uniform mentally. You know, give me 10 minutes. I want to talk to you. But part of that is also to get that communication going, because a lot of people are like, well, leave work at work, but that's a big portion of my day. So I don't want to shut myself off either. If they're concerned, you know, I mean, my wife wants to hear it, or, you know, they want to know. But the thing is, if you don't let them know, when you start cutting yourself off, you start to change. And when you finally need help, they don't know who you are anymore. I don't know who you are. You have changed so far from who you were when I met you, because I don't know your life for the last 10 years. I don't know what you're dealing with at work because you don't tell me. So I can't help you when you take the uniform off, because you never do. You never do. So I think that the family is a very big support. And the reason why you have to kind of talk to them, I don't think you have a choice, is because they kind of know how best to fix you. Because to them, you should be vulnerable. You know, that's your family, that's your loved ones. But if you hold yourself off, you're going to become a stranger to them. You're not going to know what triggers you anymore, because they're not going to know about that part of the job that does have that effect. So again, I think it's very important that there is an effort, if there's something bothering you at work, to bring that home. Now, how you bring it home, when people say, I don't know how to explain it to them, that still shouldn't be your excuse not to tell them. You know, I know it could be a scary world, and you don't want to share that level of what the world could. It is an extreme world. We work in a prison. I mean, I think they kind of have a little idea that the world we're in has that inherent risk. So I get how some people may not want to share that with their loved ones because they're afraid that's only going to make them more worried, but you're losing them. You know, and if you want to keep that marriage going, that relationship going, you have to be able to share something, and they have to be able to listen. They have to be able to do it in a manner where there's no judgment and they're not closing their ears because they're disgusted by the world. No, they have to know, you know, what it is, you know, and you have to be able to explain it. A lot of us use that as an excuse not to open up, you know, but you know, if that becomes an excuse not to open up, or I don't want to hear it because it's too violent, blah, 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 you're shutting them off. You know, you're stopping that person from having the most important resource they will ever have in their mental well-being. So that's definitely got to be a communication before you enter the profession, or if you meet during the profession, it's got to be something that has to be said. Hey, this is the world I work in. And sometimes, you know, things could happen. And I want to know, are you going to be in this long run where I can share stories with you just so I can be who I need to be, and you can help me at that point remain who I need to be. And I think a good relationship allows that person not to sugarcoat it, but say it, you know, because I'm not a big fan of leaving work at work.
No, I love that. And I totally agree, because I'm just thinking about it like, you know, the family must already have thoughts in their head, you know, and if you don't let them know what's happening, then they're just going to go off based on what their head, which might be worse, you know, than what's actually happening to you. So it's kind of, you know, they have their own kind of mental stress happening, and just like not knowing what's happening and kind of almost not feeling grounded.
Yeah, you are. Can I tell you something? That's a great a thing right there, because that helps me with my argument. 100%. You know, they could think it's a lot worse. And you know what? Another thing is, guys. Sorry, I'm saying guys. I'm so used to. You know what? Another thing is, though, too, is that when you get that chance to kind of let things out, it helps the relationship. You know, it shows there's a support that's unconditional. That what you need, I'm there for you. And I know what you need because you tell me what you need. You know, you tell me what's affecting you. You know, you don't hide it. And again, even though you have this inherent risk, you can't push yourself away and tell this person, hey, I need you to be who you are, but you can't tell me everything. I'm doing it from the other perspective, you know, because then that person is really not letting things out all the way, you know, because maybe there are certain things why I'll tell you this, but I won't tell you this. Well, maybe the things that you don't want to tell are the most severe, are the things that you need to get off your chest, you know, and then when you go to your peers, they could be laughing or being sarcastic about it. You know, you got to let your family know, hey, and I want to say something too. When it comes to the dangers of the job, most of the family, what it is that the family's trust in you. So most of the time, if you're mentally well and you're carrying yourself professionally, the family kind of feels like, yes, you know what? I know they work in a dangerous job, but I know Tony, he's professional. He doesn't, you know, rile up the inmates. He's not looking to, you know, cause any trouble. He's just looking to do his job and go home. So even though there's an inherent risk, you're not an asshole to add to that. Because think about it too, if I'm going out, I'm not professional and I'm just riling the inmates up. One thing is, you know, first off, that's not how you want to be, because you wind up putting the whole facility at risk, you know, just riling shit up for no reason. But second thing is, I also think it's disrespectful to your family, who's expecting you to come home. They want you to come home. So I think the family allows us to go to this profession because they trust in us and our ability to carry ourselves in a professional manner. I think that's why that kind of minimizes that inherent risk that you have. Now, if you do happen to get assaulted at work or get hurt, reality kicks in real quick. Okay, we know there's an inherent risk, but now it's happened. So now you have to go back and convince your family about why it happened. You can't hide that. Yeah. It was situational. It had nothing to do with me, because they start to lose faith in you. So what you have to do is you have to remind them that this was situational, but I'm still me. Because eventually you may have to go back. And you don't want to have the added worry of, well, one thing is I got to focus on this facility. I got to focus on, doing my job here. But now my family's not supporting my move back. So I don't have that support. So now my family's on my mind, which is messing me with, focusing on what's going ahead. So, I really do think you need to have that open dialogue. And in the end, if you're an officer trying to, when you say these stories, there's ways also to let them know that they could still have faith in you and the work that you're trying to accomplish. So I think how it kind of settles itself out is how your family sees what you do, and more importantly, how you do it. If that makes sense. That makes sense?
Totally. Yeah. I was, you made me just think about it. Like, you go through certain things, and then, do you feel like you experience, like you something happens, it occurs, does it affect you again? And like PTSD. So that's what actually was kind of the question. Is, do you feel like there's sometimes you go through something, and then like maybe 5 years later or something, it affects you, and then like you could be in the same cell or something, and it just triggers something for you?
Okay, so I've been blessed to have very limited physical interactions. I had a few, but not as severe as many others that I know that deal with this every day. I've been blessed, Again, I do carry myself professionally, which helps me out 95% of the time. But again, sometimes you just have situational things that even if you are professional, you're dealing with human behavior that can be very unpredictable. But the thing about working in a prison or a jail, whatever it is if you are assaulted, you have to go right back into that same environment. So the key here is not to generalize those feelings of fear, and to be able to specifically narrow down what those concerns are. Like I get that if you get assaulted, yes, it could be very hard for you to go back to work. It could be very hard to build up the courage to do that. But when you are getting your mindset right, and let's say you have to go back to work. I mean, we have some brave heroes that will go back to work, and some that say, you know what, this isn't for me. And I get that. I respect that too, because there's a risk, and it's not for everyone. And by the way, it takes more courage to admit that it's not for you. So I don't want people to think I'm minimizing that, because that takes a lot of courage to say, you know what, because people also want to go based on pride. I'm not going to let that in. Turns out their mind wasn't right yet. It's more about pride. So one thing is that when you're out, and hopefully, if it is a major assault, you are kind of having a way to debrief or kind of talk to someone. You have to be able to understand why it specifically happened, whether it was a situation, who was specifically responsible, because the last thing you want to do is go back to work and have anxiety and generalized animosity to any inmate, as opposed to the one who did it. Now it's every inmate. Or if my staff delayed in their response for whatever reason, I don't trust my staff anymore. And maybe it was just this one specific staff member that you worked with that, didn't run to the code. They ran away, because it happens. That happens, sad to say. Yeah. So I think what you need to do is you have to be able to understand as best you can why it happened, how it happened, and then be able to kind of move forward from there, as opposed to sitting there and not knowing what happened, not understanding what happened, and then trying to go back to work. And because you don't understand what happened, or you can't identify the specifics, you have anxiety. At any moment, you're gonna snap, because I just got attacked here, but I haven't been able to specifically understand why it happened. So now at any moment I hear a code, or any moment an inmate comes too close to me, I'm on edge. So at that point, you're not ready to go back to work, because you haven't been able to kind of pinpoint what that concern is. But again, it's not easy, because again, you have to be able to really look in and really get to those feelings. And most of us don't want that. That's where family can help. But when you are ready to go back to work, it's not just about the physical, because most of management says, okay, well, you had broken ribs. Now the ribs have healed, go back to work. Well, hold on. There should still be another mental evaluation, because now you're going to put this person back into the environment. They haven't been in this environment since the assault. So now you're going to put this person right back into the environment, and we don't know how that's going to trigger them. So you need to kind of slowly reintroduce that person back to where they need to be. So you also know one thing is that that person's good to go, but on a management side, on the liability side, can I trust them now? Or are they a greater liability because of, you're right, PTSD, and now where's the liability? Will they assault any inmate? Will they freeze, and now they can't respond to help their partner? So again, there's a lot of concerns, but I believe there should be some follow-up with mental health before you put that person right back into that area where they would have something that could trigger them.
Totally. Yeah. I was just, as you were talking, I was like, oh yeah, like, we've been thinking about, that integration process, like the thing happens and it's like, how do you integrate it into your life? People forget, that a piece of them is still stuck in that scene. And it's like, how do I bring that piece back? Because I never thought it would happen to me, or this is not going to happen. And all of a sudden it happens. And then it's like, how do I accept that? How do I get approval of that, of what just happened, and not either be a victim of it or become a persecutor of it,
Right. And I love that. Don't forget now, and that's awesome, because that also leads into the fact that now, and we kind of touched on this before, but just to revisit again, because we kind of led with it, is your family allowing you to go back. You promised your life to me, and now you go ahead and go back to this facility where I almost lost you. So there's still that dialogue there that your family has to have the confidence in you going back, and you will not be 100% if your family doesn't support you, because again, you're not going to be focused on what needs to be done. You're focused on a life at home that's in shambles.
Yeah, totally. Do you see? Did you ever get a part of you, where your family really worried about you and going back and everything, and then really said that to you, just like you said?
You know what's funny? I've really been, now that you're asking these questions, I've been blessed in my career. Most of the concerns we talk about, and I never take them as my own anyway. I just I'm very highly empathetic. I've always been. Plus, I also have my degrees in psychology. So I'm very.
That's where you got it from.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I'm very attuned to how people feel. I'm a big fan of social psych, by the way. So that's where I got the book, Manipulation. It's based on psych theories. But I'm very attuned to. Because I definitely have a high level of empathy. I've always had that, even as a kid. I mean, still even today, movies still get to me. People tearing. I don't even know what they're tearing about. All of a sudden, I start to tear. It's just something in me, which is also, it's not a bad thing, because it keeps me in tune with the spirits of others. Now, I will say that because your question is basically, have I ever, I can strongly relate to people who have gone through that. And I understand it, and I listen to them, and I hear their stories. I don't interrupt them. I've had my venue for many years, and the way they tell me their stories, I relate to it in such a deep manner where, again, I haven't been through it. So I don't want to minimize their experience, but I feel it. I feel it, and I understand where or why they would feel ways the way that they would if they had to go back to work and whatnot. So no, I when it comes to leaving a piece of me, the only thing I could think of is, and again, I've been lucky so far. But if I remember there was this hero who got killed in North Carolina, Bertie Correctional Facility, Megan Callahan. I don't know what it was about her. I didn't know her. I knew her only through the profession. And then when I saw it on social media that she had passed, and this was in North Carolina, she was a hero, by the way. I mean, she got set up by an inmate, went in there with the intent to save a life because it looked like he had set something on fire. And she responded to go in there and save the life of the inmates because there was a fire that the inmate had started, but it was a setup. And the inmate wound up killing her with the tool that she was going to use to protect, which was the fire extinguisher. And I was just so invested in that story. I met the mom, the father. We went down and we started filming her story. We were almost done with it, where I'm doing it with a company named Guardian RFID. We just got to wait because of COVID. We got to get the courts for the I almost said gentleman. I'm so used to doing that, for the scumbag, for the inmate that killed her. And you know what, guys? I'm not a biased person. I'm very objective when dealing with the inmates. But I'm not going to be apologetic for saying what he said. That I'm not saying that. I met the family. I know what he did to that family, and I also obviously what he did to that hero. So I'm not. He's not a gentleman. He's a bag. But with that said, her story was powerful to me, to the point where when I went there, I felt I left a piece of me there in North Carolina. The officers that were affected by her loss, that they thought they could have done more, and they really couldn't. But as they play it by, they just, they're constantly reminded of things that they could have done differently. But at that time, you don't know, when they're judging themselves at the highest level for really a situation that they could not control. And to see these heroes all broken up and wounded. And when you see this movie get released, hopefully when it's done, you're going to see people that are told not to be vulnerable. You got to see these video. I mean, they're letting you know how they feel, their love for this hero. And it's very emotional to me, because I've never seen this level of emotion from the profession. And then with the father as well, and how, he broke down. It's highly emotional because, again, these are people that don't. And when they do, you feel it. So I understand your question. I may not be able to relate it to a specific incident that related, in the facility, but I know how it can impact the profession, and how once you go there, and again, talk to the people who have been impacted, you don't leave 100%. It stays with you. It stays with you.
Yeah, no, I was just curious, because I was like, oh, there's a way where you have such a deep perspective of it, like you've lived it, and like, and as you mentioned, empathy. I was like, oh yeah, like the amount of empathy you have is actually kind of a strong suit, and it's something, as a correctional officer, you think you were probably taught to turn down empathy, and you've managed to not only have it, but kind of it's gotten stronger.
Yeah, there's a big confusion in corrections, and the confusion does come from a lot of our front line, but we're getting better at it. I promise you. It's empathy versus sympathy. Empathy. So we are allowed to be empathetic. It's just an objective perspective of what someone is going through. Sympathy, we can't have that. Sympathy blinds you with emotion, and then eventually you're just making decisions that aren't really professional in nature. They're just more based on the emotion of what you feel in relationship to what the inmate's pulling out of you. It's a very manipulative tactic. It's in the book. But empathy is something that actually makes you a better officer, makes you a better correctional staff member. One is objective, and it gives you a level of understanding. But two, it's empathy that controls the emotion. So when most people like, oh, you can't be empathetic, when they wind up explaining it, it's like, okay, you're not explaining empathy though. You're explaining sympathy. So, but empathetic is something that I believe it does. It makes you a better person, but definitely in this profession, it does carry a lot of weight.
That's awesome. Man, I feel like we could keep talking for hours. That's because I've ran out of questions. And I'm curious if you want to add anything that you feel like we might have missed.
You know what? You were great, man, by the way. I learned a lot. I'm hoping you can give me.
I'm gonna send it to you. You can, cut pieces off if you want.
I'll post this up.
I believe you. I'm down to send.
If you give it today, I'll post it up and say, guys, here's a hint of my testimonial, and maybe it can motivate. And I'm lazy, so I'm probably not going to edit this part out. I'm just going to say, guys, he helped us out. But I thought it was great. You really. The only thing I would say right now is that I believe in what you're doing is truly invested by the questions that you ask and what you're able to pull out of me. I don't really focus a lot on myself on the channel. It's not my intent. I really focus a lot about the profession, unless I have to tell a story that I feel can relate to what I'm trying to get. But this was good. This was healthy. This was something that was needed. And I believe this could be something that that we shared that could actually be beneficial. Because even if people don't read the testimonial, what you were able to get from me today could save a life, save a family.
That's awesome.
So I thank you for this opportunity. And if you don't mind, before we sign off, can I just simply say, guys, thank you for watching Tear Talk.
Watch Tear Talk if you haven't watched Tear Talk. That's awesome. Definitely. Well, thanks, Anthony. I appreciate your time. And from us here at Unconditional Freedom, we want to first of all, thank you for your service and the jobs that you guys do. And we know that's not something that gets said a lot, and we want to make sure that you guys know that. And second of all, thank you for doing this interview. You've been very generous with us.
Anytime.
Right on. All right, Anthony. We'll see you next time.
All right, take care, sir.